This day 375 is Zohar Pshat, and we're back into the cryptic part. So I suspect that until we get out of the Cholos, which is in a couple of blot from here, not so quick, um, we're going to be a lot of cryptic stuff. And again, the question is who this is relevant to. I'm sure it's relevant to Rishon Bar Yochai, but not so much in our generations to people like us, because obviously there's a lot of high level revelation here, which you have to be very holy in order to attain. So we spoke about the wheel within the wheel, and we said that it split it into to two, and two sides. One of them seems static, one of them seems kind of in flux all the time. That's kind of starting from the bottom: 3, 6, 9, 12. 15 lines at the bottom. So he says, "So now this chaya comes down to two sides. This and I don't know if it's the same thing, but let's assume these train citrin are high ruach the barka. They are this ruach of the barak, the iskabich ruchin, which has two ruchin. Ruach the barka apikat chiyusa cholinu nehurin. One side has this all these illuminations spoke about, which are constantly, evidently, administering chesed, and it's static in the sense it doesn't change. It's not in flux. But the other side, rucha achra, is not minay. There's the other side which is illuminated from it. Tika rucha melata. It's a flaming ruach. Now, flame by definition is something which is constantly jumping and it's not static. It's constantly in flux. And he says, Naimine train the horn. It itself has two lights. The Narbo, which are four. Wherever they are, I don't think it's important for us to know right now. But the point is, they're constantly changing color. We had four colors before, four basic colors: black, white, red, and green. So they're constantly changing, just like a flame. It's constantly changing. So these are constantly changing. Begin to highlight, and this is gavna. This is lat hacherva misapeches, the flame of the revolving sword, which is put at the entrance of Gan Eden to keep them out. This is also lat hacherva misapeches, which is constantly changing and revolving in order to bring a constant changing shefa from above. So we have the shefa, which is constant. I used the word static before. Maybe constant is better. Definitely better. And the shefa, which is in flux. And everything is constantly changing. These are the lights which are constantly changing. The shinin of the charba. And there's the sharpness of the sword. And they are over and involved. Begin the high lad cherv kaima, because this lad cherv is over and above Ali Nun Ainor, and those 70 lights we spoke about in the fourth Echal, the Beidina, which corresponds to the Beis Din. And this is constantly being reassessed and rejudged. And from here we see that all those Dayanim who will judge judgments in this world, there's a sword over them and above. In other words, just like in Shamayim, there's a sword which is constantly changing based on the an assessment of what's going on below, as we'll see in a few moments. So too, there's this sword on every dime below. And it's referencing the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Zayin Ralph, that some is in Din, Kilu Nitzutezor brings down, Kilu Cherem Munachso Ben Yerchoisab. So if there's a sword between his thighs. And the Rambam Milchus Sanhedrin says, Kilu Cherem Munachso Tzavaro. Like there's a sword over his neck. It's a sword over the head, but it's the same principle. Okay? In other words, there's always a very, very significant danger that you're going to abuse the din. And even in Shamayim, there's a scherv on those who are making the din below to make sure they do it right. And the lights are constantly changing it based on, I guess, how the assessments are taking place. And they have to be very careful to get it right. So even Malachim have to be careful to get these things right. High light hacherev elaine inu norin the star smola. These are the flame of the sword are the lights which are on the left. Apigu charchus achra, and they themselves create another chaya. The kaima arba, which is on four supports. Lo kaimi kumayu. Then they're not static. They're not constant. They don't remain. They're constantly changing. Trey me mina, trey me smaller. Two in the right and two in the left. Karucha dechusa I. When the ruach of this chaya al lane comes into these constantly changing manifestations below. Notzitz me'atreni tzutzim laton. They're two flaming sparkles. Nafkim haychol lebar, and they go from outside the heichol misapi toledi, and constantly changing. Okay, so what the details are is beyond me, but the main point is that there's the constant and there's the constantly changing. In tzutzim melaton, and these nitzutzin are melaton, they're burning sparkles. They're flaming sparkles. Zimin nukve, zimin guvre. Sometimes they're feminine and sometimes they're masculine. Wow. Okay, so sometimes they're giving and sometimes they're receiving. It's sometimes they bring from the top down and sometimes they take from the bottom up. And he says that when the Tzur cross references the malachim who are zimnin char and zimnin nukva. Sometimes masculine, sometimes feminine. So evidently, according to the need of the hour, sometimes the shefa comes down from above, sometimes shefa depends on what comes from below, the all these are the side which is constantly in flux, constantly changing. And then he says, and this is beyond our capacity to understand, but there are different types of malachim. Sometimes they're called ruchim, sometimes called irin kadishin. I guess depending on their status, maybe we'll come back to tomorrow, see if we can see somebody who defines it. No guarantees.